As one of the biggest shonen anime of the moment, it was no surprise that sooner or later Jujutsu Kaisen was gonna get a video game adaptation. However, the reception so far hasn't been unanimous. On one hand, the game looks floaty, and its look isn't up to today's standards, but on the other, it's a game made by Viking, a developer that's quickly becoming synonymous with unique character gameplay design, as well as the best netcode that arena fighters can produce nowadays. It's been mixed, so today I want to cut through the noise and tell you exactly how things are. My name's Globku, and this is my review of Jujutsu Kaisen Cursed Clash. Wait, no, that's the baseball minigame. That's just the pre-order bonus. This is Jujutsu Kaisen Cursed Clash. As you pick up and play the game for the very first time, it will feel very awkward. It's heavy, every time you press a button there's a huge recovery in each move, and because you don't know what you're doing, you just keep getting knocked down, which takes ages to recover from. It really makes a bad first impression. But I'm happy to say that it does improve over time. Getting comfortable with movement is the first step. You can dash with a button, jump, double jump, and super jump. All of this spends your stamina meter, so you need to stop and recover that eventually. Now, this movement does look very floaty, and it is. But I do understand why they made it this way. If you look at the stages, most of them have huge buildings or obstacles to traverse, so this is how the game keeps you comfortable when jumping all over that. And let's get this out of the way early, these stages are easily my least favorite part of the game. They promote a hit and run type of playstyle, hiding behind corners and zoning you with attacks that ignore the environment, and when that's not a problem, you constantly have objects obstructing the camera. Out of all the stages, I like maybe 2 of them, because they remove most of the clutter. The rest, I feel like they were bad choices. But that's movement. Attacking, on the other hand, is fairly complex when compared to most arena fighters, as each character has a total of 6 attack buttons. Lots of them go into combos when you mash them, others are projectiles or single hits that might have different properties like armor or even teleporting. You'll notice that most of them don't deal any damage though, instead they just build meter, and if you build enough meter, your cursed level will go up from 1 to 3 over the course of a match. If you die, you have to build the level up from scratch. Cursed levels unlock more powerful attacks, and sometimes enhance the character's potential, which is what this game calls passive buffs that are unique to each character. So if you want to deal damage, you're gonna have to use those curse techniques, which are 2 additional buttons on top of those 6 attack buttons, and their properties vary greatly from character to character. Finally, you have your awaken moves, which is a fancy name for ultimates and domain expansions, which you can execute once your character has full meter. Those are the buttons, so how do you combo them together? Well, mostly you don't. The combo system in this game is very limited. None of these attacks chain into each other, not universally anyway. There are some characters who can, but those are exceptions. But most of your buttons end up knocking the opponent really far away, so every combo is like 2 or 3 hits. If you get a wall bounce, you might be able to extend with something fancy, but even then, you'll reach the combo limit quickly and the character will just be forced into a knockdown. And that's because this game has a big focus on 2v2 battles. By default, all battles are 2v2. Characters are balanced for 2v2. Some are pretty much worthless in 1v1s. If you really want to play 1v1 in this game, you can, but you're gonna have to set it up manually in a lobby. And so, combos lose priority over big single hit attacks for huge damage. Sure, you can extend a combo with a friend, but you're quickly gonna hit the combo limit too. The focus becomes on building your cursed level as a team, which levels up your curse techniques and coordinate with your teammate to land these huge attacks. Here's a quick example. Gojo, for instance, has a big attack that you might know as purple. But if you see it coming, it's very easy to dodge and you can even block it. So let's say Geto here is gonna freeze the opponent in place with his centipede. Now you're a sitting duck, and that is going to hurt. You can also unleash joint attacks together with your teammate, which is a great way to build curse meter and deal damage for free. This is where the depth of Jujutsu Kaisen Cursed Clash comes from, and the way they justify all the floatiness and extremely long knockdowns. If you hit an enemy with a combo, you want them to be knocked down for a while so you can go attack the other enemy. That is the principle behind this decision. However, it's really boring to be on the receiving end of that, and it ended up making the game as a whole look really bad as a result. I understand the decision to give every attack this huge recovery. In a 2v2, it makes it easier to keep up with the action, but it made the game feel heavier than you would want a game like this to feel like. And it also promotes a more cautious playstyle. It doesn't reward aggression, instead it rewards counterattacking and dodging, or just pure zoning from far away, where you can keep a safe distance and pressing a button at the wrong time doesn't lead to death. Overall, there are a few decisions that I really don't like gameplay wise, and yet I can see the competitive potential that comes from its 2v2 side. But to understand why I like some of this potential, we have to understand the roster. This game features a 16 character roster, and while that number may be very low compared to other arena fighters, every character is extremely unique and will fundamentally change how you play and how you approach the game. On top of that, these characters may even change their own approach when paired up with a different character. And to me, that makes comments that mock the roster size seem frankly ignorant. For instance, Nobara, as his owner, is going to stack a nail debuff on the opponent from afar and then detonate it at any time, anywhere on stage. So when you have that debuff, you're always looking over your shoulder. That's just 3 out of the 8 Nobara buttons, by the way. Then you have Hanami, who is arguably also his owner, but plays completely different. He's got slower projectiles, he can set up a flower to rain seeds on the opponent after a small delay, and Hanami really wants to land their ultimate since that is how they can release their left arm, making their attacks just that much faster. And I'm talking about 2 zoners here. That's how different they are within the same archetype. Because besides those, there are some completely different characters too. If I had to compare these characters to Storm, I'd say switching from one character to the next is a bigger difference than switching from a regular character to a puppet character. But do that 16 times and consider the different combinations since this is a 2v2 game. That's why I think the roster is impressive, and honestly, this is what biking is very good at. As far as fan service goes, some team combinations also have custom intros, and when that happens, they usually have a custom joint attack animation as well. Mechanically, it works the same, but the special animation is definitely appreciated. And with that said, let's have a quick look at the different game modes you can play here, starting with, of course, Story Mode. This mode starts strong with the really good cutscene, and then disappoints you for hours. It retells the Season 1 and JJK0 story in slideshows. There are 4 cutscenes in total throughout the whole thing, and I think they're really good. If the whole story got this treatment, I think we'd be having a different conversation, but it didn't. It's just the usual slideshow experience. As you beat these chapters, you start unlocking this relationship chart that I found pretty pointless as well, and within this chart, there are some small side stories which are more slideshows and this time not even voiced. Gameplay-wise, the game puts you in some unique scenarios. Sometimes you fight in 2v1 or even 1v3, and not always against a playable roster. Sometimes it's against these minor curses that have a pretty limited moveset. But at least it's not just versus battles over and over, there's a little bit of variety, and it can actually be challenging, which is a nice change of pace from most anime game story modes, where you just mash and win. Story mode here is completely optional. All you get from it is some outfits, as you have every character unlocked as soon as you boot up the game for the first time. After you beat the story, you unlock 2 extra challenge fights, which are actually tough. It was fun for me beating those, but unfortunately, it was only 2 of them. If you're looking for more of a challenge, you might find it in the co-op mode. You can play this game mode with a friend or with a CPU teammate, tackling waves of enemies which include random combinations of the playable roster and the minor curses from story mode. After you beat all the waves, the character you played as gains experience, so you can level up, buy some items from the shop, equip them, and now you're ready to beat even stronger and stronger enemies. I found this mode to be very repetitive and very grindy. Even though the enemies and stages are random, it doesn't feel that varied. You're just beating random enemies to get XP. Sometimes you won't even get enough to gain a full level after clearing all the waves, which is very frustrating, and that's why it's grindy. The end goal is to level up enough to take on survival mode. This is what you could call the end game of co-op mode. You're gonna face off against some very strong opponents here. If you try to take them on without a leveled up character, you're in for quite the challenge. I found survival mode to be awesome, but the grind required to get there just isn't worth it in my opinion. Online is pretty straightforward too. You've got ranked and unranked modes, but climbing the ranks gives you rewards like costumes and other unlockables. As far as the netcode goes, it's pretty much the same as the last arena fighter from Viking, which was My Hero 1's Justice, which is to say, it's very good, even though it's delay-based and not rollback. You can feel the delay when the distance is huge, like Europe to West Coast or to Japan, but anything closer you can definitely adjust and play, and it's all very, very stable. Of course, Wi-Fi is still Wi-Fi, the netcode is dark magic, but it's not a miracle worker. If a player rage quits during a match, there is unfortunately no penalty at the moment. But at least the other team can still get some points, as the quitters usually get replaced by bots. So you can beat the bots and the ranked match will still count for you, unless the lobby actually breaks and everyone just disconnects. And you can access all of these game modes, including the co-op, through the online lobby. This is where you can party up before you queue up. Lobbies hold up to 4 players, so you can have a private match too. They even have a training dummy in case you and your friends want to practice some specific combos. But for tournaments, currently there is no way to spectate matches. That's gonna make running events a little bit tougher, and tournament footage might be low quality or even non-existent. But you can always count on dedicated TOs on the AGC server to hold anime game tournaments. You can join the server through the link in the description. I'm sure a competitive scene is gonna come out of there. Free Battle is the last game mode we'll talk about today. This is where you can play in an offline match with your own custom settings. You can set up a 1v1, a 2v2, or a 2v1 if you please, but it's just you and the CPU. There is no local versus against another player in this game. No split screen, no way for two players to play this game without being online on different consoles, each with their own copy of the game. So Free Battle for me ends up just being sort of a practice mode because they let you set up stuff like infinite meter, an infinite timer, infinite lives too. You can even turn on damage numbers and set the CPU to do absolutely nothing. The one thing you can't do that you would expect from a practice mode is set any training dummy behavior. So you can't set it to block or anything like that. You can only set it to be a CPU or to do nothing. And that's pretty much all I use this game mode for, is to land different combos, look at the damage numbers, and yeah, that's it. This game's graphics definitely look a little bit outdated. I'd say the models actually look really clean in 4K resolution, but when it comes to animation work, a lot of it can look stiff, just like the gameplay. And in my opinion, it's the #1 reason for this game's very poor reception. That's not to say everything is bad though. There are ultimates and joint attacks that are wonderfully animated and look really beautiful too, but it's not every attack, which gives the game a bit of an inconsistent feel. The soundtrack follows this trend. There are some absolute bangers that very much resemble JJK. One of my favorites is this victory theme with a disjointed piano. Or the menu music, which is so reminiscent of the Season 1 intro. Other than that, there's a decent amount of customization in the game, mostly outfits, with every character having anywhere between 2 to 5, with a few color options for each variation. And you can tell this is one of the places where they might plan to expand with DLC. With all of that said, it's time to score this game, and if you're new here, we use letters for our review scores from F all the way to A, and this is my score for Jujutsu Kaisen Cursed Clash. Overall, I think this is a step back for biking. I don't think this is a better game than My Hero 1's Justice 2. Granted, it's a different approach and a different style of game with a 2v2, but the concept has a few flaws that are hard to overlook and will probably never get fixed because they're at the core of the gameplay systems. Like the huge recovery in every attack or the incredibly long knockdowns. This makes the game feel very heavy and sometimes honestly boring. That said, I wanted to highlight some of the good stuff that biking keeps doing. With unique gameplay for each character, this small roster is more impressive to me than many 100 plus character rosters. And their netcode is still great, and I wish many other arena fighters would learn from them, at least until they figure out rollback. Ultimately, if you've got a friend who's down to learn this game with you, I think you might have a good time. I mean, I've been having a good time with my friends. Competitively, there is potential in this game as long as it can hold a healthy player base, but unfortunately, the offline modes don't do much to help that player base grow, and if you don't have a buddy, you're gonna jump into online with randoms, so your experience may vary. And that's my review for Jujutsu Kaisen Cursed Clash. Hope that was helpful, and if you're looking for even more, I've posted a few gameplay videos already. Maybe start right here with the main character Yuji. He is actually great for understanding the game. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.